internet. So, hey, look, Mavs won last night and now are up 3-2 against the Clippers. And the Game 5 winner in those series typically goes and wins the series 80% of the time. So that is good. The Stars have also clawed their way back and have taken a 3-2 series lead over Vegas. So all is right in the North Texas sports scene. But you did not tune in to the North Texas Sports Center. So you've tuned into the Texas Real Estate and Finance Podcast, and I'm your host, Mike Mills, a North Texas mortgage banker with Geneva Financial. And I come to you each week with expert guests in and around the world of real estate, finance. And so together we can pick up little nuggets of knowledge on how we can get better and better at this game of real estate. So I thank you for tuning in each week to go on this journey with me. And if you are, oh, by the way, if you're looking for a lender to help you with your clients, I do that also. So give me a shout and let's have a conversation. I am always happy to help. Now, today's episode is all about finding all the ways you can to make a living in this ever-changing landscape of buying and selling homes. Now, most of us typically think of doing our jobs as just helping buyers and sellers in your standard 1-to-4 contract. But there are many ways to make your way around real estate. And I hear this often these days where agents are looking for other jobs because they're getting frustrated and concerned about their business. Or they're trying to do other things because they feel like it's just getting too hard. And I often like that to mentality of like being a plumber for 20 years and specializing in fixing, say, residential home issues almost exclusively, and then having that business slow up for whatever reason, and then deciding to look at being a carpenter. So instead of looking at something like commercial plumbing or sprinkler systems or septic systems or whatever, it's all still pipes and it's still fittings. And as a plumber, you know that like the back of your hand. So just because one facet of your business has maybe slowed down a little bit doesn't mean that there aren't ways to use your special set of skills to find ways to expand your business to other aspects of what is still within the industry that you're great at. So you just have to get a little creative and you have to know where to look. And today we're going to share some strategies with you that might help you down that road a little bit. But as always, before we get rolling, if you enjoy what we're doing here each week and want us to help us keep things rolling, please tell the internet that. I need the AI algorithm to know that you like this so Skynet will share it with the rest of the planet. So do me a favor, like, subscribe, comment, and share, the LSCS of the world to your entire network so we can keep this thing growing and spreading our message to the awesome real estate professionals just like you. I greatly appreciate your support for my little science experiment here. So any help you can get, I would greatly appreciate it. Now, today my guest is a North Texas real estate broker, but he is so much more than that. He's balanced out his book of business in such a way that whether times are good or bad, he's out there still doing deals. Now, he has multiple income streams and multiple business and is a great example of how you can add to your business, even if you just think outside the box a little bit. And he's here to share strategies with us. So please welcome to the podcast, Mr. Mark Hewitt. How you doing, Mark?
Hey, how's it going?
Doing well, my friend, doing well. So thank you for popping on with me here. I appreciate your time. I'm sure you're a busy guy. You got a lot of balls you're juggling in the air these days. Yes?
Yes, sir. Yeah, makes it fun.
I want to kind of get right into it, just as far as, what right now in this market, everything has slowed down a little bit. To anybody that's out there listening to this, to say that things have declined a little bit since the last couple of years would be an understatement, but there's plenty of people still thriving and pretty people still making money. I'm curious for you, because you have your toe in so many different things. What right now is a segment of the market that is really kind of, keeping everything afloat for you, really kind of generating the most business for you right now?
Yeah, so right now for us, like I will say, there are a lot more people that are in the market to obviously sell their home, right? The problem is with a lot of those people that want to sell is they're not necessarily looking to go the listing route.
Right.
They want options. And so for us, we're purchasing properties, fixing them and reselling them because they just want the easy button. They want to be done with it. Maybe they can't afford it, keep up with the repairs. So there's that kind of segment, but then there's also people that we're finding that want cash flow and they want to be able to, their asset that they have, maybe it's paid off or they owe a little mortgage. They want to be able to keep that and generate cash flow, for future spend for themselves without giving up all of it. Right.
Right.
So the owner financing part, doing the creative financing is also another segment that we found great success in as well.
Now, on the owner financing thing, are you like structuring the deals for the buyer and the seller? Are you finding the sellers and then, listing it as owner finance? Like, how are you finding your way to kind of be a part of that contract?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways. So usually, if they have a very small mortgage or they own it free and clear,
Mhm.
free and clear is great, right? Because then we don't have to worry about paying off anything. But we want the property to be free and clear
Right.
if we end up purchasing it from them on a note. And so what that means is basically what we'll do is we will actually offer them terms as if they were the bank themselves collecting the monthly payment every month, not having to worry about repairs, not having to worry about vacancies,
Mhm.
not having to worry about any of that stuff. It's just basically what I always tell them. It's like, hey, it's mailbox money.
Right.
You're going to wake up on the first of the month. You're going to get your check. You don't have to worry about taxes. You don't have to worry about insurance. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. And so we'll structure a deal with them where we're paying them a certain interest rate over a certain period of time,
Mhm.
so that way they don't have to have the stresses of actually being a landlord.
Do you ever leave options in there as far as like being able to buy out of that contract should you want to? Like when you put together the financing, is there a place in there where you can say, hey, look, if we can negotiate on a proper price or whatever the case, buy out of this agreement, we will at some point? Or do you kind of leave those, not open-ended because nothing's open-ended, I
Yeah.
guess, but do you kind of leave them to where you're just going to hold it as long as they want?
Yeah, so basically for us is, I mean, we can sell it at any time, right?
Mhm.
So we, if we get an end buyer that ends up just buying the property and we pay off the entire note, we can
Yeah.
do that at any time. But I will tell you, one of the things that we've done is in there, we get the first right of refusal to buy the note back. So let's just say, for example, we owe them $140,000 and they're like, you know what? I don't want to wait another 25 years. I want to just collect the rest of my money that's owed to me now.
Right.
What would y'all pay for it? Well, typically that's about a 6 to 8 year cycle of when people will look to cash in. And if right now, note buyers at the moment are paying roughly about 88 cents for a really good note, 88 cents on the dollar. And so
Okay.
if we have the first right of refusal, we can go buy our own note back at a discount, which in turn is going to again make us more money.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So you're giving yourself the ability to get the option if they do decide they want to cash out their equity and just move on down the road, then you get the ability to not have someone come buy it out from underneath you. So that makes a lot of sense too. Are you
Exactly.
finding like the segment of the market for that? I would think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would think that would be a lot of your boomers out there that are kind of looking for that mailbox money because they're getting towards retirement. Maybe they own some real estate, but they don't want to pay out, gobs of money in capital gains tax because the moment they sell that property, they're going to owe, if they haven't lived there at least, they're going to owe a pretty good chunk there. So is that one of the benefits for the seller financing for the seller is that they're actually getting away from that tax liability?
100%. So yeah, not having to pay that all up front and pay it over time. But
Mhm.
also at the same time too, like we're finding exactly like you said, people that, they just want that retirement type mailbox money, right? And
Yeah.
that's something that's important to them. And then also they're in that phase of their life where they don't want the hassle. They want to be able to go on vacations and not necessarily worry about, is my tenant destroying the house?
Yeah.
But also at the same time, the other kind of person that seems to be a good fit for this are the people that have tried landlording and they realize that, hey, I'm paying taxes, I'm paying insurance, I'm having to do repairs all the time, and I'm really not cash flowing as much as I thought, right? Because
Right.
let's face it, landlording is not easy.
Nope.
And yeah, so they're like, hey, you know what? If I can just collect a certain amount of money every month and not have to worry about anything, then here you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing that sometimes, it sounds good on the investor side of things when you get that, those properties that cash flow. But, I think anybody that has been in that game, at least even for a short amount of time, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's certainly money there and there's certainly a way to make it a profitable venture. But, you got to kind of know what you're doing because there are a lot of pitfalls involved and it's not easy. It's definitely
No.
There's a reason that property management companies exist, because the general landlord is not exactly fired up about fielding phone calls at 9:00 at night with the tenant telling them that the fan's too loud and they need to adjust it or whatever the case may be. So
yeah, the thing is, and I mean, I'll be the first to tell you, like I had a deal that I ended up buying. It was like, I'm trying to remember, I think it was like six properties on one, like six actual single wides on like one lot or two lots, whatever it was. And I looked at it and I was like, man, I'm going to pay this amount of money, but I'm going to make this much cash flow. And this is a no brainer. Like I would do this deal, so I ended up doing it, of course, because it was no brainer, right? We've all had those.
Yep.
And then the Texas freeze comes, and and then all of a sudden, like,
and all the plumbing is above ground. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and so then I get a phone call. Hey, so like the toilet broke, the pipes all froze, they disintegrated, and I was like, dang, man. So all that cash flow gone, like
it's gone out the window.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's just the way it is, right? So needless to say, I don't own those properties anymore. I did luckily make money, but I was quick to get out because I realized, like, hey, this is actually not going to be as good as I thought it might be.
I'm curious, since you were diving into that market a little bit, I could see with the prices being so unaffordable these days, for the average person, right? I mean, there's still deals to be had, but when you're trying to buy a house in Frisco, or you're trying to buy a house in Grapevine or whatever, you're paying out the nose for it, and there's not a lot of there's not a lot of properties for sale. So even with the high rates, are you seeing or do you pay much attention to the growth of the manufactured market, as far as where you're the land, as you get a little bit outside the metroplex here in North Texas, where you maybe have a little bit more opportunity for more affordable housing, just because of the fact that you have a little more space, and you could look at manufactured housing as as a segment that could have a little bit of growth? Are you seeing that at all, or are you paying attention to it?
Yeah, 100%. So I will tell you this, like, one of the things that we do is we'll buy vacant land, and then we'll go in there and develop the land and actually put mobile homes on the land,
Okay.
And resell those, because there's definitely a need for affordable housing. And the more that the housing prices continue to rise like they have, there definitely needs to be that option, right? So that's something that we do. The other thing is we've bought plenty of used manufactured homes that needed a little lipstick or needed a full remodel, just depending. And we've turned those and flipped them onto the market. We've owner financed them. I mean, there's that big need for that. And so 100%, like, that's a market that I will just tell you, I fell into. But as I started learning more and more about it, I was like, man, I kind of enjoy this a little bit, but there is a lot of nuances that go with manufactured homes too.
Yes.
So
Yeah. Well, especially when it comes to financing, anybody that's doing traditional financing and not going through hard money or going through whatever. I mean, I obviously know that, just due to the fact that if we want to do a man home, in most cases, it's got to be a double wide. It can't be a single wide. You have to own the land, obviously. And then you go septic inspections and foundation inspections, and it can't have been moved. And, it's really not that hard to do, but it just eliminates, several properties from that. And I see that, especially, I had somebody call me the other day, actually, that was asking about manufactured housing, but they were wanting to buy a manufactured house that was in like what do they call it? Like a neighborhood, but it's, none of the land was owned by the owners.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It was all the lots were rented, but they owned the houses on the lot. And I was like, we can't finance those as a traditional mortgage company. And I also kind of told her, and I don't know, you could tell me if I'm killing your business model here, but I also kind of told her, I was like, look, if I was buying a property, I would certainly not want to purchase something that I don't own the land underneath it, because that creates all kinds of problems for you down the road, because we're like, well, we can just move that manufactured house. It's like, well, you can, but the cost to move it, and then, from compared to what you paid for it is not that different. And then you run into all kinds of issues moving it, because now you have issues getting financing that way. So
100%.
do you see that? Is that, do you see that piece of it too?
Well, yeah, so we won't buy anything that's not on owned land. Like, it has to be on owned land. And, quite honestly, like, we've got a deal that we're closing on in about a week or two. It's a single wide. It's been moved more than one time. But the thing is it's under 100,000. It's on a half an acre. And, we're getting it for a price that will allow us to actually turn around and owner finance that for a very affordable price, and it'll move extremely quickly. So even if it's been moved more than once, there are other options, but you can't go, let's just say pay $200,000 for a property that, not moved at all is worth 210, right? It doesn't, there's nothing there. You've got to have a big enough gap.
Right. The math's got to work out.
Correct. But we have people that call us all the time and say, hey, I want to sell my manufactured home. And I go, great. Do you own the land? They go, no. And so I'm like, okay, well, let's do this. We can always find a piece of land to put it on. So let's just see what they want for the trailer first. And if it's a really good deal, then maybe we might consider buying it and moving it. Right. But then you run into the risk factors of if it's older and you go to try to move it. I mean, you just pray it doesn't fall apart.
You got all kinds of issues if it's starting to collapse on you. Well, and I guess in that case too, it kind of, you win in both ways in that gives you a good opportunity for owner financing because, not many traditional banks are gonna be able to touch that. And so you have the opportunity then to put it on that property, give someone good term, reasonable terms, I should say. So that way it's another cash flow generating property for you as well, which is great. Now I'm curious, you had mentioned that, you have people call you. So how do you, well, you know what, let's back up. So start with, let me know how you got into this game. So you obviously are a real estate broker. You have your real estate license. Did you start there, or did you start with some of the other stuff like the investments and property flipping and hard money, and then, get your real estate license? What was the evolution of all that?
Yeah. So my dad's been in the business for like 35 years.
Okay.
And so for me, like, I never wanted to really get into real estate. It was never my plan. I was actually, I was on the medical path, right? I wanted to be like medical sales or be a plastic surgeon, something like that. Right. And so, basically for me is like, I had a hard time finding a job. Like people are like, oh, you're overqualified, or, oh, sorry, you don't have enough experience. I'm like, man, how am I going to get in the workforce? So, of course my dad's over there like, you got to get into real estate. You got to get into real estate. Yeah.
Got it right here, buddy. What are you doing?
Yeah. So anyway, so what I did is I started, doing my classes and everything, got licensed, and basically started as a retail real estate agent, right? Working with buyers and sellers. And I didn't know what I didn't know. And I also had like an extreme like tunnel vision. I was just so focused on finding sellers and buyers that I didn't even think about anything else like outside of that. Right.
Well, because that's what you're taught. I mean, when you come into the business, that's the vast majority of the game, right? You help people sell their home or help people buy homes that are listed for sale. I mean, that's normal.
Exactly. So, and I started basically calling cancels and expireds, right? So I was working with people that were already usually overpriced, didn't like their other agent. So I had to like, here I am like, hey guys pick me, So, anyways, but so real quickly, I got that experience. And then, other people in my life had started saying like, hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And so that's kind of what transitioned me into the investment game was, okay, what's this assignment stuff? What is, when they talk about wholesaling real estate, like, what does that look like? And so we started going into that space. And then like everything we do is in parallel. Like, can we add it on to what we already do without changing anything?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if it doesn't meet that, then it's like you're saying with regards to going from plumbing to a whole different
to a total different field.
It makes no sense, No.
And real quick, I don't mean to cut you off, but can you, because, I think I had this experience in all things where people will talk about stuff related to their field, and other people that are in the same field, they're like nodding and they're like, yes, that makes sense. I understand that. And then they'll say things where inside that person's mind, they're like, I have no idea what that means, but I'm going to pretend like that I do. And so that way I don't dummy. So will you just explain, because I don't think a lot of realtors understand the difference, understand really what wholesale means. So can you explain, when you say you got into wholesale real estate, explain exactly what that means and why that's different than, the normal retail.
Yeah. So basically for us, like we go and we'll find properties that are off market and believe it or not, like this baffles me even today, but there are people that don't want to list their home with a realtor. They don't want the hassle. They don't want to deal with it. And they're willing to take a significant discount to not have to do it.
Yeah.
And so, somebody had told me like, hey, here's what wholesale real estate is. You're basically going to go find an off-market property for, let's say, 100,000.
Mhm.
The house completely fixed up might be worth 250,000. But what you're going to do is you're going to go contract it for 100,000, and then you're going to go find an investor that's willing to take on that project for a different price. So let's say 150. So you're basically going to now have a assignment agreement with the investor for a price of 150.
Yep.
And then they're going to close on it on the closing date that you've already negotiated with the seller. And you're going to make the spread between your $100,000 contract and what you assigned it to the investor on. And by the way, you didn't come out of pocket with any money to fund the deal. The investor did. You just got a check from title when it closed.
Yeah. See, I
And
think
so,
that that's such a segment of the market that not many realtors understand exists. And I've had this conversation with others before too about this, and we don't talk about it often, but there's an entire industry of what you call middlemen, which is all your job is to go find the deal and find someone willing to put the deal in place and or pay, take the deal.
yeah.
And it is insane in any industry, honestly, when you have people that the person that can connect two parties willing to transact with each other, because it's such a big world that we live in, that role, it's a grind. Like you're calling, you're emailing, it's a numbers game. You're out there just hammering away at it, but all it takes is time. There's not a lot of risk, it doesn't seem like, typically, and because you don't find the investor, you don't get the contract till you find the investor, I think, usually, but you can explain that. But I mean, it's such a big piece as a realtor. If you have a license and you understand values of homes, neighborhoods, what house could go for if it was fixed up, and can run all these scenarios, there's a lot of opportunity there still, and I just don't think most people realize it.
No, for sure. And yeah, I mean, basically for us is if we go meet with a seller. So I'll just give you an example. I had like my first deal ever. I remember it till this day. I don't remember all the details because it's been a while ago, but basically I called the guy and I said, hey, I'm interested in your property. Are you interested in selling? And they said, yes. I said, great. Would you be interested in a cash offer? They said, yes. I'm like, okay, what do I do next? Right. So then I'm like, all right, well, great. Let me come out and take a look at the property. Let me see what we can do. He's like, well, hey, it's vacant. Nobody's living there. So I show up. It kind of didn't, like, I wish I had like a taser on me or something, because I was like, man, this kind of seems a little bit scary for me to like go just open the door and go inside a vacant property, right?
Yeah.
So I take a look at it. I give the guy a call back and I'm like, hey, I'll tell you what, we'll pay all your closing costs, no realtor fees, 100,000. And he's like, okay, deal. And I was like, all right, well, hey, I'm going to send you the contract. Let me go ahead and get this typed up. Let me go find my contract real quick, and stuff. And so anyway, so we ended up contracting on this deal for like 100,000. And then I didn't even know any investors that bought property. I had no idea. I just started making calls. I started reaching out to people. I started networking as fast as I possibly could. I even went to investor meetups to get, as many investors as I could. And then next thing you know, I ended up selling that property for 125,000. And assigned it to that investor for 125. So at closing, the title company cut us a $25,000 check. And the only amount of money that I was out of pocket on the front end was my earnest money that I was protecting myself with an option period that gave me the option to back out to get that earnest money back. So really, when you're talking about no risk, I had no risk in that transaction, because worst case scenario, if that deal fell through, the investor was giving me way more money down as a non-refundable deposit that they would have had to give me had they backed out,
right,
than if I would have just backed out of my original contract.
So on that deal, I'm curious, what was the actual timeline from when you got the buyer or the seller to agree to when you found an investor and got them contracted? Because just you saying, like, I went to meetups, I called everybody I knew, to get it, because that was the other aspect of this that I don't think, that people don't realize, is that in order to do this, you have to have a network of people that you can fire an email off to and say, hey, I've got this property. Here's what it is. Who wants it? First come, first serve, come on out. But if you don't have that network, then you've got this house, but you don't have anybody to buy it. So how did you mitigate getting to that? And how long did that take?
So basically for me, from the time that we had it under contract to the time that we closed, it was 30 days.
Okay.
But basically what I did is it was just a mad hustle on the front end. Like I found a buyer within 2 weeks. And
Okay.
so, yeah, but really it was basically going through looking at, okay, who are all the people that had people they represented that bought properties in that area within a 3 mile radius for cash.
Yeah.
So then we pulled all those realtors. Okay, we're going to send them information or reach out to them and say, hey, do you have anybody? And then from there, going to a meetup, gathering as many cards as I could, adding them to our email. Hey, here you go. Here's a property. Reaching out to title companies, seeing if they have cash buyers, hard money lenders. I mean, you name it. It was just a mad dash to get that thing sold, but it was so cheap that I was like, I know we can get it done.
Right.
It's just like you just knew it was a deal,
Yeah. Now, if somebody listening to this is like, yeah, well, Mark, that sounds great. You bought $100,000 house and you sold it for 125, but that's like a needle in a haystack today because you can't find $120,000 or $100,000 house. So what would you say to that?
So that was my thought too. So I thought, oh man, this is no way this is going to work. But I'm going to tell you this, we have done over 300 deals just like this. And I can guarantee you that they're out there. You just have to find them and you have to do the work to find them. So, we've done flip projects. We've done, I did a house. I'll just tell you, like, there was one that we did. This was my best house that I've ever done yet. Okay. As far as profit wise, but we had bought this house. The guy actually called me. We didn't get it the first time. And so he contracted with somebody and then that fell through. And so he calls me up. He says, hey, Mark, do you still want it? I said, yes, I'll take it at the price that we agreed upon. We closed on it ourselves. So we actually didn't even sell it to anybody. We closed on it ourselves. We went in there and removed all the junk. So we paid about $3,000 to get a trash bin and people to haul off all the junk. And then I paid another $400 to get it professionally deep cleaned. I slapped it on the market for double what we paid for it and sold it and made about $100,000 net in our pocket within less than 45 days. And I mean, those deals are out there. It's a limiting belief to think otherwise, and you got to comb through a lot. Like you do have to comb through a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not just going to jump out at you, but and then you got to make a lot of phone calls and you got to contact a lot of people because, they have to be willing to do it. But that again goes back to the whole idea of if you're a real estate professional, you've been doing this for any amount of time, 2, 3, 4 years, you see properties, how they should be priced, where they should be as far as the market's concerned, because you have the comps, you have the knowledge, you have the data, right? It's all there if you just do the work. But what you have to understand, and this not, when I say this, sometimes people are like, oh, well, you're taking advantage of people. It's like, no, look, what you're doing is you're reaching out to somebody and saying, hey, I'm willing to buy your house for this price. Okay. Are they willing to accept it or are they not? Because you don't understand what their situation is. You don't know if they have debts they have to pay. You don't know if this product is just, there's no way that they could put the 10,000. It may only cost $10,000 to get you 60 or 70, but that person that owns that house doesn't have $10,000 and they can't put it into it. So they're stuck. And so they're willing to give it to you or sell it to you for maybe a less than what it's worth. Maybe it's because they don't understand the market very well, or maybe it's just because they don't have the resources to be able to put the improvements in there, but you're helping them because you're giving them the money that otherwise they wouldn't have gotten. So, just spending the time and doing the research, because I think that's where a lot of agents lose sight of the fact that, well, I can't find any buyers and I can't find any sellers. It's like, well, I mean, you can, they're just not calling you like they were calling you back in 2021. In 2021, you got in your car, went to go get Starbucks, picked the kids up from school, and your phone rang 3 times with people like, hey, I want to buy. I heard you're a realtor. Give me a call. And today, that's not happening. Today, you have to go earn that business. You have to do the searches. You have to contact people. You have to get networked with folks. You have to do all of that stuff in order for this to occur. And there are ways to get deals done. But the more you communicate with people, the more you network with people that understand how to do these things, you will learn it. And I think you can speak from experience on this. Once you get into it and do it, and you understand how the mechanism works, it's not that tough other than doing the work, right? And finding the people.
The work is the hardest part, right?
Yeah. But finding the deals.
Finding the deals. Yep. Doing that is the hardest part. But once you actually go in and, so we started with the wholesaling, right? So we started down that path. Yeah. And then I realized, okay, now we're going to go into actually buying some properties and flipping them ourselves. So we're going to go into that aspect of the business because it was just an easy transition. But then what I realized is not everybody wanted to necessarily sell for cash and they didn't want to list it. So there's another option, which is then, okay, owner financing, where we're going to buy it from them and create a note with them. And so basically what's happened over the years, because of the way that the market's changed, people want options.
Yes.
That's all it is. And if if you're like me when I first started in real estate and you're just putting yourself in this box of just, hey, let me list your house, right? I'll give you an example. Had a house that we closed on that we went against another agent. We went in, the other agent was trying to list it, just trying to list it. That's it. Well, I can get you a buyer. And we went in there, we said, hey, we can list it for this, or we can pay you this cash. Well, guess what? We got the deal cash. The other agent didn't get it because we had an extra option, right?
Yeah.
And that's what people want. And we're in that environment today where that is going to win all day long.
Yeah. Well, and especially too, I imagine that even helps when you reach out to folks when you're looking for these deals, when you say, hey, would you like to list your property for sale? And they're like, I mean, I don't want to I want to get rid of it, but I don't want to go through all that crap. Like, I'm not willing to mess. Okay. How about we pay cash, but we lower it to this amount? Well, I really was hoping I could get a little bit more out of it than that. That's kind of below my number. Okay. What if we do owner financing and we can do it like this, and you can get this much money and we can buy it from you that way. So now you have cash flow. Okay. Well, maybe that's a little bit better option. I could be willing to do that, or what, but if you get to start the conversation, and then, like you said, you can give them, well, we have option one, we have option two, we have option three, we have option four. They may still not be interested in what you're doing, but if anything, you're probably planting seeds. And that's where I think a lot of people miss too, is like sometimes just having these conversations with, and I know this from personal experience. I talk to people, and I'll give you an example of how it works, because I have people that call me and they'll say, hey, Mike, we want to buy a house. We want to check out and see how we qualify, what our numbers look like, all this stuff, but we're not looking to do anything for another 6 to 12 months. Like, we just want to get all of our ducks in a row. So in 6 to 12 months, we'll be ready to go. Like, great, no problem. So we go through the whole process, talk about what kind of loans are available, payments, cash, all these kind of things. And I'm like, if you wanted to buy a house today, this is how much it would cost you. This is what it would be, blah, 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 blah. Well, human nature is, and I even tell people, I tell them this. I'm like, if you're wanting to wait 6 to 12 months, then stay off the internet. Okay. Don't go to Zillow. Don't go to Redfin. Don't look at homes. Don't click on that house that shows up in your Facebook feed, because they know that you were talking to me looking for homes. Okay. Because if you do that, then you're going to start down this rabbit hole of houses, and you will find something that you want to buy. Okay. Now, I'm always going to be here when you're ready, but if you truly want to wait 6 to 12 months, then don't start looking. Well, inevitably, 90% of those people within a week or two are calling me like, we found a house we want to make an offer on. I'm like, hey, what happened to 6 months? What do we do? Because the idea is like, once they know that there are options, even though it may take a minute to digest it, they may not be ready for you right that minute. Right. But when that person that you reached out to and you asked them if they want to list their home, and you gave them all the choices, and something happens to them in their life a week or 2 or 3 weeks later, and they still got your number, they're going to call you and they're going to be like, hey, I'm thinking that this might work. I need a little more information. And that's the beauty of how all this stuff works.
Oh, 100%. And I will tell you this, like, I will give you an example that happened like 30 days ago. This is like a textbook, perfect example. Went on an appointment and said, hey, look, if you want to list this property right now as is condition, we can list this thing for you for basically like 200, maybe 190 it'll sell for, right? Mm-hmm. And if you want a cash offer, we can give you 120. Because we're going to have to put a little bit of work into this thing. They're like, well, we don't want the cash. We don't want the 120. But I said, we can buy this from you at 165 if you decide you want to finance it to us, because you have a small balance. We'll pay off that balance, right? So guess what? They opt for the middle one. They wanted us to go ahead and just give them the cash flow, but they knew all three of the pricing. They knew, and that's why I'm saying it's just, those options are so key for people, in this market.
Yeah. Now, not to give away your secrets, but that's why I brought you here. So, again, you said, and I agree with you, and I've, like I said, talked to many people that do these kind of things, and the hard part is finding the deals. How do I find these deals? Where are they? How do I get them? So give me some. if you have, there we go. If you can, whether it be like you mentioned title companies, you mentioned, if there's, are you calling expireds? Like, what is the process for you guys to look for these deals? Is it calls, emails, texts? Like, break down kind of how you go about finding them. Because look, and this I always tell people is like, they're like, well, I don't, my secret, nobody, 10% of the 2% of the people in the world are going to do it. So, but the information is great.
100%. So we're sending a mail out to people. So we send out mail campaigns, postcards, and making sure that, they're bigger than normal, right? So that way they stick out. We're doing a lot of pay-per-click advertising. So basically when people are like, hey, I want to sell my house for cash, those sort of things. And then the other thing is we are heavy callers, right? So we are calling people, asking them if they want to sell for cash. That's just one of the ways that I feel like we find a lot of deals that way. And people go, oh, well, sometimes you'll talk to people and they're like, get a real job. And I'm like, hey man, you'd be surprised. This is actually my real job. And people want to sell this way. Because sometimes what happens is they start talking about it, but then all of a sudden it's like, well, this dude just called me and we just talked about it last week. And actually let's have him come out and see what we can do, and then the other way, of course, like we do send, just plant the seed. Yep. And the bottom line is for us, I will just tell you, from the time that we make contact to the time that we lock in the deal and get it under contract, it's about a 90-day process. So from start to finish for us to get it under contract is 90 days. So we're at least getting the seed out there. And then from there, it's the constant follow-up and then getting it locked up. So those are our main.
I'm sure you've developed quite a process and a system. I think that's another thing that's so important and crucial to this is that, whenever you're going to take on a new endeavor like this, or you're doing something, that's requires a lot of legwork apart, you have to build a process to it. You have to, this day I do this day I do this, or step one, we make a call, then we send an email, then we send a text, then we do a follow-up, and, and all that kind of stuff. And people will just start doing it. And they're like, oh, I'm going to call. And then, they don't really have a what do I do next? You got to follow up with them because it takes time. Like you said, it's a 90-day deal in most cases. So it's not something that you can just make a call one time and be done. You have to have a pretty dialed in process that you do it. So have you been developing that over the years? Do you have people that help you with it? What's your mechanism?
Yeah, so our process has developed so much since when I started it, right? It is, but basically when a new lead comes in, they get 3 calls, recommended 3 calls on day 1, no voicemail until the last call, 2 text messages, one email. And then day 2, we drop that down to 2 calls, 1 text, 1 email. And then day 3, it's 111 for the rest of the 7 days. Because usually what happens for us is if we don't get a hold of them within 7 to 10 days, or one of our sales reps doesn't, then it goes into like a generic bucket. And so basically they don't have just single solo access to that lead anymore.
Right.
And so because here's the thing, I mean, even if somebody doesn't pick up, we don't give up on them.
Right.
Because we've had people pick up 60 days later, like, oh, I'm so sorry. Now I'm ready, and so that's the result for us, I will say, is that I have fished out, and our team has fished out so much money in deals that we had 1,000 days ago, 6 months ago, whatever it may be, that we never gave up on.
Yeah.
We brought them back to life at a later date because they just weren't ready at that time. Whereas the old me in the past, when I first started, I might just say, well, they're not interested. I'm just going to throw that lead out and we'll keep moving on. Yep. But no lead is dead to me until they tell me that, basically they're dead.
Yeah.
So
why don't you get a real job and stop calling me?
Yeah.
I'll stop calling you. But I guarantee you, I would be willing to bet even some of those people that gave you that like curt response, a few months later, they're like, hey, remember when you called me? And, I'm sorry, I was kind of rude. I had a bad day, but talk about this a little bit more.
Well, exactly. And so when they hang up on me, that's always my cue to call them back. And I'm sorry, we got disconnected, Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Well, and it's hard. It's a really difficult thing. And so like when I do this show, we talk about all kinds of stuff related to real estate, and we talk about marketing a lot and advertising and putting your, promoting your business. And, obviously the biggest channel to do that these days is social media. That's a big player in it. And some of the pushback that we always get from folks when we talk about this stuff is, I just don't want to anybody to yell at me, or I don't want anybody to not like me, or I don't want bad comments, or I don't want, people judging me, or whatever the case may be. And my response to that a lot of times, like, if you're in sales and that's what you do, like that's your job. I mean, you have to develop thick skin or you're not going to survive. And it doesn't matter what kind of sales it is, because every type of sales that you do is going to involve people that don't want whatever it is that you're selling. Like they just don't. And some people are rude about it and some people are nice about it. And I think that the biggest shift that's occurred, and I said this earlier, from where we were in 2022 or 2021, 2020, is that sales folks in real estate now have to sell. Like you really have to sell. And before, you just had to take orders. You just had to answer your phone a lot of times because everybody you knew was trying to buy a house because interest rates were 2%. And now that they're 7.5%, coming down, by the way, but 7.5%, that's not as an appealing thing anymore. And so you have to be able to explain to somebody why there is still value in what you do with real estate. And it is funny. We have such short-term memory or amnesia, whatever you want to call it, when it comes to real estate, where, if you go on Twitter right now, you would think that the market's crashing and the world's coming down. And I'm like, look, here's the reality. Yes, we are, as far as volume and units sold, we are at some of the lowest points that we've had in the last 40 years. I mean, that's just the truth. Okay. But even with that, home prices have gone up. They've gone up 5% because we don't have enough houses. So there is wealth to be had in real estate. There is, income to be made working in the real estate industry. And just because you go through these slow periods of time, because we just came out of this like insanely never happened again real estate market that just was nothing like anything we've ever seen before. But because our memory is so short and that's all we remember, we don't remember what it was like even 2 years prior to that, when you were still kind of grinding out deals. When things get hard, people look for other things to do. They're like, well, this is too hard. I can't do it anymore. So now I'm going to go, drive Uber or whatever. And it's a shame, but in a way, for guys like you, it's a good thing.
No. I mean, and here's the thing too, like tough times, like if, I can't tell you how many times we've had to pivot. Like we've seen everything on the horizon. Like we knew what was coming, right?
Yeah.
We were planning ahead for that.
Yeah.
But the thing is even in it, when you're in the trenches and it's happening, you're like, man, we have to pivot. We have to change this. We have to, and so even like one of the things that we've changed in general is we've had to look at like our deals that we're going to assign to investors. And we're like, man, if we can only get X on this deal, let's say we can only make 20 grand, but I can go fix this thing up and sell it and make over double. We need to squeeze every bit that we can out of these deals. And so that's kind of a change that we've kind of made on a lot of our stuff, but I mean, and then, obviously the owner financing, we've started getting into the wrap game where we'll, get in and finance it with somebody.
When's your album dropping?
Wrap it. Yeah. So, yeah. You want to here? Hold on one second. Let me get my new song.
Get your beats out and start getting into the rap game.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, it's tough times like these though, that when you're in it, it'll make you better. It'll make you more efficient, as long as you're asking the right questions and you're not trying to do things the way you've always done them when it was always working, Yeah.
Well, even for you, you said, now I'm sure even for you guys, the deals are fewer and far between than they were just a few years ago, but you're now evaluating each deal with maybe a closer eye, because now like you said, you need to squeeze out every dollar you can out of that one, because the next 2 or 3 or 4, whatever that come, are going to be harder and harder to get, as long as the market stays where it's at. So you even though you have deals to be had and deals to be made, you're evaluating those deals at a greater level, because now you can't just, because you got 20 going at once, you're like, okay, yeah, that's enough on that one. Go ahead and see what we can do there, and let's move on to the next one. You don't have that luxury anymore. So now you have to change how you do it as well.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So, I'm curious, with anybody in the real estate world has been paying attention to what's happening with all of the lawsuit stuff and what's coming down the pipe on that. So anytime I get agents on, I always like to know, how they see it, what they think about it. I obviously have my own opinions on this. Anybody that's listened to this knows kind of what those are, but generally speaking, like, how are you taking, these changes, and what are you looking at, as far as where you think things are headed, over the next 5 years?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, that's, yeah. I'm curious, you want to hear, hold on one second. Let me get my new song.
So, I'm curious, with anybody in the real estate world has been paying attention to what's happening with all of the lawsuit stuff and what's coming down the pipe on that. So anytime I get agents on, I always like to know, how they see it, what they think about it. I obviously have my own opinions on this. Anybody that's listened to this knows kind of what those are, but generally speaking, like, how are you taking, these changes, and what are you looking at, as far as where you think things are headed, over the next 5 years?
Yeah, so basically for me is like, I always think it's funny because, these attorneys will come out and they'll go, hey, like let's just say, for example, the HOA, like you guys in this community, we're going to sue the HOA because you guys deserve to have all your decks replaced and all the siding on your homes replaced, right?
Right.
And so they're like, yeah, let's do it, and so they go after the HOA, they win, they get their decks replaced, they get their siding replaced, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, all their HOA dues go up. And then, people are now starting to sell. So it's driving prices down because there's more competition because everybody wants out.
Yep.
But they did it to begin with for the homeowners, but it ended up affecting the homeowners, right?
Absolutely.
And so I look at the lawsuit that's happened. And again, the argument's been made like, hey, this is for the consumers. And I look at this and I'm like, ultimately at the end of the day, I feel like who it's going to affect the most is the consumer.
100%.
I don't think it's going to be the realtor that's going to get affected. Yeah, our business is going to change a little bit in terms of how we do it, or getting agreements up front, or having to field phone calls of what the seller's willing to pay commission wise, or whatever that may be. But the thing is the consumer at the end of the day, they're going to get the ones that get affected from it.
Yeah,
they're going to get the trickle down effect, and it's unfortunate, but you're kind of seeing that writing on the horizon. I mean, it's coming.
Yeah.
And with, right now agents will go show a house and open a door without anything in place, and so they won't get a buyer's representation agreement. They'll usually just go out there and get in front of the consumer. But now the commission needs to be negotiated up front. The buyer representation agreement needs to be negotiated up front. So now it's like, if you want to go see a house, like the days of just calling an agent and getting them to go open the door is out. Now you got to agree to the commission and not even knowing the house that you're going to buy, what the seller's willing to pay. So you're going to be on the hook for the rest of that money.
Yeah.
In terms, it's just, it's crazy.
Yeah. It's, I haven't read into it because I've seen it in a couple places, but Zillow apparently just released something. I think it was yesterday, about like a 7-day, free showing, no obligation buyer rep thing, it just kind of in response to this. Again, I don't know all the details of it because I haven't read into it, but I could see, or I can see things like that. There's going to be different methodologies at which people come up with. We're going to try this. We're going to do it this way. No, let's try to see if we can do it this way or whatever. But I agree with you. At the end of the day, the consumer is the one that gets hurt because, the thing that that the MSNBCs and the CNNs and the Foxes of the world don't tell you is that when they're talking about this thing and they say it's a boon, for buyers and sellers because they're going to make so much more money, and somehow they think prices are going to come down from this, which is to me is insanity because it's like, you guys don't even understand how it works. You don't understand comps. You understand comps, right? Comps are what all the other houses in your neighborhood have sold for, recently. Well, you think that a seller is going to go, well, that house that paid the buyer's agent commission sold for 400,000, but since I don't have to pay a buyer's agent, I'm going to sell mine for 320 or 380 or whatever.
Yeah.
That's not how this is going to work. Like that doesn't happen. No. So, and then the other side of it is that, we've always lived in this system that I mean, obviously we're in the business, so we have bias to this, but it seems to have worked pretty well because the number one path to real estate, or the number one path to individual wealth in this country, has always been real estate and equity to retirement and having enough money to take care of yourself when it's all said and done. And the way the game was always played is that it's like the pay it forward thing. I'm the seller. I have the equity. When I bought the house, when I didn't have the equity and I didn't have the cash, the seller paid my agent. So I was able to get this home, and now I'm going to do that for the next person. And that's kind of how it always went. And now we're saying, seller, you don't have to do that. Now, I agree with you that at least for the time being, that's still probably going to happen on many cases, that sellers are still going to pay buyer agent commissions because, especially right now with homes sitting a little longer than they have been. And when people get into certain circumstances, we're like, I got to sell now, like one way or another. And they have a ton of equity still that they're going to go, hey, look, I'm fine with it. And you're going to see that happen more often than not. Where it's going to flip is when we get to the market, which we will. It's just a matter of when and how, where interest rates come down some, and now the appetite for buying real estate has increased across the population to a greater extent. And now sellers are going to be in a place where they can really decide, do I want to pay a buyer agent or do I not? Depending on how many offers they get and who wants to be the most competitive and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And that's when the consumer really starts to get hurt, because at that point, there's a lot of buyers out there, first-time home buyers, younger folks that just don't have access to the money they barely have access to the money for their down payment and closing costs, much less to pay an agent, right? And so then there'll be a market, part of that market will be filled by, I had somebody on before, it's like the TurboTax of realtors, where, you'll go online and you'll sign up and you'll pay $500 or something, and they'll represent you and help you fill out a contract and do all these things using AI or whatever. And that'll work for a segment of the population, but that buyer is not going to be well represented. They're not going to. They're going to run into problems, and we won't feel the real effects of it probably for years, because once somebody buys a house and they didn't have a professional representing them in the transaction, and then, they have issues with the foundation, or there's problems that come up inside the property itself, or the neighborhood goes to crap and they didn't realize it because it was almost to that point. Now their house is worth less than what they paid for it. And all these things that go into play when you're using a professional that can tell you these things, they're not going to have that. And then we're going to have a generation of buyers that are going to be like, I got screwed on my real estate transaction because I didn't have representation, whether they realize that or not. And then the appetite for owning a home goes away, because then it's like, if 20% of buyers are getting hosed in the deal because they got bad advice on what to do, then why would you want to buy? I'll just go rent, and that's where, my little tinfoil hat that I wear on the show all the time, I think this is very much a coordinated big money deal. I think that there's large private capital firms behind a lot of these lawsuits and getting them rolling and getting people in a frenzy about this, because that makes real estate less accessible. That makes their money more valuable in the market, that they can now purchase it up. And the largest expense that we have as homeowners in America is, or anybody, is your living expense, rent, or your mortgage. And why would you not want to have access to that, flowing in your bank account every year or every month? So, it's a shame. But, we can't do anything about it. We can talk about it and we can have conversations about it, but the change is a-coming. So, you just have to learn how to thrive and adapt in it, and figure out where your niche is and where the opportunity is.
No, for sure. I mean, it's kind of like when you even talk about that, it reminds me of like when people go and they buy new construction without a realtor because they think they're going to save money, right? And then they go back and they're like, oh man, I should have used a realtor. Like I got, I mean, it's the same. It's going to be the same situation. Yeah. I mean, it's just,
it's already played out like that in many other facets of what this is. And, and unfortunately, I think that's going to also be where we get to at some point. I do think, it's going to stay status quo for a little while. The only thing that would throw a wrench into all this is if they decide that, sellers cannot pay buyers agents at all. If that becomes, I think that's, at least right now, it seems like that's less likely, but I've heard so many things coming out of the Department of Justice when they talk about steering, and, they use the word steering a lot. And so whenever that kind of language is being used, I always have concerns that, they're going to come on top of this and just go, yeah, we like everything that you guys are doing here. We can buyer agent, but we're going to just say that no matter what, sellers can't pay buyer agents. And I hope they understand that that's the dumbest thing in the world to do, but politicians don't always make good decisions with this kind of stuff. So, so it's a struggle, but what are you going to do? You just got to find the opportunities.
That's right. Just adapt.
Yeah. You guys have also dabbled into the hard money side of things a little bit. Can you kind of explain what y'all do there? Do you do your own lending, or do you use companies, or where you guys kind of find your place in that market?
Yeah, so basically what we did is that we saw a need when we had investors buying off-market properties from us. A lot of these investors are buying it not necessarily with all their cash, but they're using hard money, right? So they're using that in lieu of the cash.
There we go. Sorry. Hey, Mark, I lost you there for a second because I think it's my side right now, actually. So not you. But anyway, go ahead. What were you saying about hard money?
So with regards to hard money, we found a need for investors that were buying from us to have access to the capital, because they all didn't necessarily have the cash. So they were leveraging hard money as the cash, right? So we went ahead and added that as a secondary type source for us to be able to fund deals, not only our own deals, but basically bring people in that had other deals that they wanted to fund. And so for us, like in terms of the hard money business, we've got lines of credit set up with different banks on like generous terms that obviously work well for the business for us. We've deployed our own capital into the hard money space as well. So it's basically those two things that allow us to keep going. But of course, just like anything, we do hit a max. We max out on what we can do and what we're willing to loan. But I will tell you this: we literally, when we opened up that company, we maxed out within about 4 months. So that was how popular and how yeah. But what we do is I look at it a little bit differently. A lot of people are very concerned about the borrower, but I'm very concerned about the debt. Like, what is the property that I'm actually loaning my money for? Do I ever want that property back if they don't touch it? And so I've had some properties that I look at and I go, I don't think I want that back if you don't do anything on it. I don't want to mess with that. So I want a good asset for me, and minimum everybody has to put a 20% down payment for me to be willing to loan money, because I want them to have their own skin in the game, and I don't cover their repair costs.
Right.
So they've got to fund their full rehab.
Right. So you're willing to give the money, but only under your terms, which is, that's what hard money is with anybody. Yeah. That's why it's there.
And if it doesn't work for them and they want to go somewhere else or whatever, we can refer them to other hard money sources that they can use the capital and borrow from them at maybe a cheaper rate, but for us, it's like this, we're going to exercise, our option first to try to get the deal done. And then worst case scenario, we'll just send it out somewhere else. But it's been very well for us. We've had nobody default, nobody not pay us back, and that works out real well. Yeah. So
was that just learning with Hard Knocks, or did you did you take a seminar, Mark? Learn how to do hard money lending?
Yeah. So no seminar. Luckily for me, the biggest thing is I've been able and fortunate to network with individuals that know more about different aspects of the business than I do. And then based off of learning from them and asking them questions and just kind of going about it that way, I've been able to actually understand how it all works. That's the same with creative financing. It's the same with the wholesaling and flipping and, all of that. And so really, like, the biggest thing is just network with people that are already doing it better than you are. And then you will have to have some hard knocks. Yes. But but the thing is once you start doing it and implementing it, then, it's like, okay, I've got this down,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, if you're ever the smartest person in the room, then you're in the wrong room, right? Isn't that what they say?
And it's 100% true. That's, So
surround yourself with people that know more things than you do.
Oh yeah, exactly. Excelling at a higher level and you'll learn a bunch, but you can't. The thing is, though, the one thing that really irritates me, and it probably irritates you as well, but is if somebody comes in and they think they know it all.
Oh yeah.
That I cannot stand. Right.
Yes. Anytime someone tells me how long they've been doing something, or how much they sold, or whatever, I immediately shut off, because I'm like, okay, yeah, you know everything already. So cool, great, sounds awesome, good for you. I'm definitely out at that point.
Oh, 100%. So yeah, always be willing to learn, always be willing. And even if you're already doing something, I'm still open to suggestions. I'm still open to input, because I can do it better. Right. Or maybe there's another way to do it. So,
there's always people. You can always learn something from every individual, like even people that you may think that you know more than, and I say think because often, you may know more in certain aspects of life, but there are certain aspects that they know way more about life than you do. And so whether or not on the aggregate you feel like you have a bigger wealth of knowledge than somebody, you can still learn something from every single person that you come in contact with, if you're open to it. If you're not, then forget it.
Yeah, exactly. Why even bother? Exactly. Like, don't waste your time. Don't waste theirs.
Before we go, is there anything that, any new avenue or route that you're seeing out there that you're kind of interested in when it comes to real estate, that you're a new business model, or different, maybe an adjustment on what you're currently doing, that you're kind of like, I'm dabbling into this, trying to figure out what's happening?
So one of the things that's out there right now that I don't know exactly how popular it is, but there's this term called novation.
Okay.
Right. And so Yeah, so basically what happens is you've got people that they will go under contract with the seller to sell their home.
Mhm.
But they will go take care of like getting the property ready to sell. Like maybe it needs, for financing purposes, it needs like the siding repainted, or it needs a new HVAC or whatever it may be. And so they'll contract with the seller to, as for a set price that they agree upon. They'll go ahead and take on the repairs of getting it ready to put on the market. And then they'll have somebody list the property for them on the market at a higher price. And they'll make whatever the spread is after it sells between what they agreed to pay the seller and what they end up selling the house for. That's something that the reason this has come about is because there's states now that are requiring people, in order to do wholesaling, to have real estate licenses. And so now this is a new kind of thing that's coming out that people are now starting to do to get around that.
Right.
Now granted, there's more to learn about it,
Sure.
but that's something that definitely like we're attuned to, and we're researching and trying to figure out more about.
So basically, if somebody, let's say, was a general contractor and knew a ton about repairs and had good costs on getting all their labor and equipment and could go in and fix a place up at a relatively reasonable price, but then doesn't want to mess with all the aspects of listing and selling it and doing all that, but they made the contact with homeowner to do this, then they're contracting out the sale of it to somebody that's licensed because they don't want to mess with that piece, and then making a spread, and then what that agent just gets their commission on the sale or something like that. Is that
Yeah,
basically
exactly. Yes. Yeah. So anybody basically, your house could be vacant, right? Your house could
Yeah.
be just on the cusp of being able to be financed. And
Right.
you've moved out of your house. You're like, dude, I'm done with this. All the cash offers I'm getting are too low, but I don't really want the hassle of having to deal with, realtors and all this stuff. I just want to be done. Right.
Right.
And maybe you don't want to put the money into the house either because you don't have it or whatever.
Yeah.
So somebody comes along and says, "Hey, Mike, I'll tell you what. I'll pay you, instead of the 100,000 cash you've been getting offers for. I'll pay you 150. I'll come, do whatever needs to be done to get it financing. I'll do all the repairs that are needed that the buyer negotiates. I'll pay the closing costs. I'll pay the realtor fees, and I'll net you 150 grand." And then they go turn around, do the repairs, everything, whatever, and they slap it on the market for 225 or 200,
Right.
and they make the difference between the 150 yeah. So,
That's good.
yeah, anyway, so that's something that's coming out, or I've seen a lot about, and it's just, it's just a matter of just learning more about it.
Again, just another way to go about making money inside of real estate. And there's so many facets to it, and there's so many ways that you can take your knowledge that you've gained over the past 20 years in buying and selling homes, and then use it in other ways that isn't just representing a buyer or seller in a transaction. And I think that anybody that's struggling right now trying to find deals to close, this is a great opportunity for you to start looking at other ways to go about it. And you can't do everything at once, so pick one. Find one. Find somebody that's smarter than you that knows how to do it. Pick their brain, ask questions, follow them around, whatever the case may be, and then start your way down that road and see what you can do. And I think there's there's a lot of ways that you can do. The wholesale thing, you don't need any money. You just need to go work. You have to contact people and get on the phone and get them to agree to sell their house, and then go find an investor. And you can literally do that with no money out of pocket. So, or, very, very little.
Very little. Yeah. Very little.
So the opportunities are there. You just can't give up on it. You got to keep looking for it. And that's, I think that's the moral of all this is, you just got to go find what you can. And hopefully, you can keep grinding away, because the market will turn. We will get into a better place where there are going to be more buyers and sellers. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. And, this particular string of downturn has been a little bit longer than most people expected and or has typically seen, but this too shall pass.
No, for sure. And I tell people, I said, look, like a lot of the people on our team and whatnot, I said, look, you've got to get the number of contacts you have will equal the amount of appointments you get, will equal the amount of contracts that you get, right? If your contacts are far down, your appointments will be down, your contracts will be down. And the bottom line is like, you have to sift more dirt now to find the same amount of gold that you would find back in the day. Like now we're just get a bigger bucket and start sifting more dirt. It's the bottom line,
All the numbers.
Exactly. 100%.
Well, Mark, I appreciate your time, man. Thanks for hopping on with us today. This is great information. I think, sometimes you just have to be presented with the different opportunities because it's hard. If you're not used to thinking outside the box a little bit, then you need a little bit of inspiration. And I hope that that's been the case for anybody listening to this, that they have an idea and understand that, hey, look, it's not just because one route is a little slower than you want. There are other routes you can go. You just got to look for them and you got to do a little work. And the bottom line to all of it is you have to work. And that's the part that, some people can do very well like yourself. And some people that, maybe doing DoorDash soon may not be able to handle. So, but I hope that's nobody hearing this stuff. So anything you want to leave with us before we go?
Just basically the biggest thing is just be willing to try. That's it. Like, just even if you don't have all the information, because you're never going to have all the information, just be willing to try it. Right. Yeah. That's it's like when I bought my very first rental property, I remember I basically was kind of scared. I was nervous. It's like, man, am I making the right choice? As soon as I inked the paper and executed the contract, I was like, I know I made the right decision. But again, if I didn't do it, I wouldn't have known it. And so it's just, you got to take that one step forward. You just got to try.
Yeah, there's always fear involved in any big decisions, especially when it comes to money and supporting your family. And, that's very normal, very natural. But if you don't try to do things and you don't put yourself out there or anything, then you're never going to have, big success. You're just going to be working for the man for the rest of your life. And nobody wants that. So you want to be the man, not work for the man.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So,
well, thanks to everybody that stuck around with us. I appreciate it. We'll be back on Tuesday with another market update, diving a little bit more into that Zillow deal that they did. So I'll give a little more detail about that. And we'll also be talking about hopefully some rebounding in rates. Job market's not necessarily looking as strong as it may seem, although tomorrow's numbers, I'm sure, are going to show that the economy is doing fantastic and there's so many jobs to be had. But I don't know how much of a reality that is. And we have a lot of companies putting out earnings right now that aren't as exactly stellar. Starbucks is down, McDonald's is down, Walmart's down. The only one that's up right now is Amazon, and they're feeling strong, but that's because they offer the cheapest things and deliver it to your door. So anyway, but I'll have all that information for you guys on Tuesday. I hope everybody has a fantastic weekend. I hope the rain doesn't get you up here in North Texas, and we will see you later. Thanks, guys.